Harish, we are on.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. So welcome back for the second technical session of the day. I welcome the following dignitaries on the dais for the session. Sri Vikram Nankani, Senior Advocate, is Chairman of the session. CA Rajendra Arora, Speaker of the session. Sri Haresh Chugani, Conference Convener, that is myself. And Sri Mansukh Waghela, Tax Practitioner Association. Now I invite Sri Mansukh Waghela to introduce Chairman and Speaker of this session. Mr. Mansukh Bhai, please.
Yeah, thank you, Harish Bhai. Good afternoon, friends. Let me begin by welcoming you all for this post-lunch session. Please allow me to express my gratitude to Mr. Vijay Keval Ramani ji and the coordinating committee. I'm really privileged to have the pleasant task of welcoming today's chairman and speaker for this webinar. We are grateful to today's chairman, Senior Advocate Mr. Vikram Nankani ji, who graciously and readily accepted our invitation, and let me introduce him to you all. Sri Vikram Nankani ji is a designated senior advocate. He is an India qualified lawyer at bar since 1986 and LLM from Government Law College, Mumbai, 1988. Very early in his career, Vikramji has started a lawyer with Chamber of Mr. Ashok Desai, Senior Advocate and former Attorney General of India. After gaining experience for more than 17 years, there he became a partner in economic law practice from 2003 till his designation as a senior advocate in the year 2014. He is an expert in matters concerning commercial dispute, corporate issues, economic offences, and is also a fellow Chartered Institute of Arbitration from London. Vikramji is also a member of SIAC India National Users Committee and acknowledged by Legal 500 as a leading individual practitioner in dispute resolution and litigation in India. He also regularly appears before various high courts and Supreme Court of India and has it to his credit several landmark judgments rendered by court that have been reported by various authoritative journals and reporters. Vikramji has also been invited as an expert lawyer on various occasions, including a Singapore court and arbitration proceedings. Vikramji has also been appointed arbitrator and also appeared before arbitral tribunal in India and internationally. It is our privilege that Vikram sir has agreed to be a chairman for this session. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Vikram sir. Now, let me introduce you to today's speaker, CA Rajendra Arora ji. Rajendra Arora ji is a managing partner of Spark and Associate and heads GST division in the firm. He is also knowledge partner with Clear Tax and Tax for Wealth. Also a law graduate, he is a member of Delhi Sales Tax Bar Association, BCAS, CGPI, All India Federation of Tax Practitioners and International Fiscal Association India branch. As an elected representative of Northern India Regional Council of ICAI, he has served as a secretary in 2017-18, treasurer in the year 2018-19, and as a chairman for GST committee for the year 2019-20. A prolific speaker and a voracious reader, Mr. Rajendra can deliver lectures in GST at spur of a moment. He is an acclaimed YouTuber and successfully runs YouTube channel named GST Ki Raah Mein Aapka Dost Rajendra Arora. Thank you, Rajendra ji, for being with us. I now request Chairman of the session, Senior Advocate Vikramji Nankani, for his opening remarks. Over to you, sir. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I must congratulate the organizers for this first virtual tax conference. The new normal that we are all getting used to. This is the time where we can really think of new innovative ideas. And I must congratulate the conference chairman, Mr. Vijay Keval Ramani, in putting this act together. Today we have a a very learned speaker with us, so I'm not going to take away his time. I'm just going to very briefly give a preface to the whole topic, the micro details of which CA Rajendra Arora is the competent person to deal with. So we all know that there was a lot of funfair when on 1st of July 2017, a new tax was introduced and slogans like one nation, one tax, everything was given. Constitutional amendments were also made, and a new regime was set in motion. We really have now to look back and see how the last 3 years have gone. I have had the privilege of looking at Rajendra Arora's presentation in advance. It has got some of the very, very telling issues which still need to be ironed out and creased out. And these 3 years have taught us a lot of lessons. In fact, a few constitutional issues also need to be tackled with. One of the issues is pending before the full bench of the Bombay High Court is that can one state now legislate in respect of its sales tax law for the period prior to 1/7/2017 in respect of pending assessments, pending appeals, and bring in new provisions, because Article 246A has been now supplanted, and you have got Article 248 also saying it is subject to Article 246A. We also have the Supreme Court judgment in Mohit Minerals where they upheld the constitutional validity of compensation cess. So if we expect now a COVID-19 cess, would that be something which will fall within the purview of Article 246A? Will it take color from Article 270 of the Constitution? Is Article 270 a standalone empowering provision to the Parliament which can make a law, notwithstanding whether the GST Council recommends that or not under the Constitution? So there are going to be several challenges, several burning issues, and I will leave it to Rajendra Arora to take you through the nitty-gritties of these issues. Some of them are still real serious thorns in the smooth functioning of the business and the industry, and I'm sure you will all be enlightened at the end of it. Over to you, Rajendra.
Thank you, Vikramji. And now I invite our speaker, CA Rajendra Arora, to take the proceedings further.
Good afternoon, everyone. At the outset, would like to thank the organizers of this wonderful virtual conference for having me invited. Would like to thank Vijay sir, Kamlesh bhai, and all other Harish sir, and all other organizers. Would like to thank also the chairman of the session, Vikram sir, for setting the tone and giving the path to move forward on this. Friends, today we shall be talking about some of the issues. We have divided the entire. Can I have my presentation shared?
Yes, you can share it.
Now, the moment I share my presentation, video goes away.
No, yes, the video will go away. No? You just share it.
Just a second. Now that's fine. Yeah. Thank you. So today, next 60 minutes or so around, we shall be talking about the two aspects of the law. In fact, law as such should be one itself, but because of the arrangement, because of the constitution of the law, it has divided into two aspects. One, the law itself, and another is the executing authority, that is the Common Portal Goods and Service Tax Network. And whatever the law is, whatever the statute is, that is being implemented by converting into a soft issue, and then implemented by the Goods and Service Tax Network, commonly called as Common Portal. So we would be talking about both these aspects, that what are our expectations, and expectation in the sense that we have already celebrated the 3rd anniversary of the law a few days back, and still I would say the celebrations are on, and I would continue to celebrate in spite of the fact that it is not that good and simple, which was being envisaged at the inception of the law. But still, no law or no system can be perfect. We have to contribute and make it perfect. And 3 years, for past 3 years, I can always say with my conviction that Goods and Service Tax Council, GST Council, has been adaptive enough, and they have met for around 40 times, of course, including some of the meetings pre-inception. For last 36 months, they have met for around 40 times, and in every meeting, they have come out with various suggestions, recommendations, which have been made applicable by the government. And this certainly shows the adaptiveness. This certainly shows the not only the adaptiveness, but yes, on the other side, we can always call it as uncertainty or frequent changes. When we say the basic rate notification for 1/2017 CTR has been changed around 15 times for past 36 months. So you can find that the basic notification, the rate notification for goods has been changed around for 15 times for past 36 months. So you can see every 2 months the rates are changing. I feel yes, some to a reasonable extent, changing rates from 28%, the rate was having around 280 items around, and now only 28 items are left to be taxed at 28%, around 30 items if I'm not mistaken. So that way, in other words, it actually expresses the adaptability and the sensitivity of the council towards the issues which require changes or fitments which require regular updations. But at the same time, it perplexes the economy, the stakeholders, to catch hold of the things which are changing every other day. Sometimes when we see, when we talk to people in the society, in the economy, they find that the law is not in the same shape in which it was being started with. It is a kind of a jacket which was made by the tailor first, and then now it has been cut from many sides and many times, that the original shape of the jacket is somehow is getting lost. But that should not be the approach. So today we will be discussing some of the expectations which we feel, which we think that should be made into the law, or those which we feel that those are made should not have been made into the law. So we will be talking about some of those aspects, and then the portal, as usual, because generally what is set for portal is that what is there in the law is not on the portal, and what is on the portal sometimes is not into the statute book, is not in the law. So it is largely expected by the portal that what is being visualized or envisaged by the law should be implemented in that spirit only. There are multiple occasions when the law said something else and it is being implemented in another manner. Just for an example, when we saw the change in section 49, the manner in tax adjustment, that the first IGST shall be adjusted with the input tax credit of IGST shall be adjusted, and it was introduced somewhere in Feb 2019, until July 2019 nothing happened on the portal, and portal kept on adjusting the input tax credit in the old manner Amendment Act 2018. And later on, department came out with the circular that even if you have done the tax adjustment in the old manner, when whatever the portal did, it is correct and there is no harm into it. So it should not be the approach. When the law is there, it should be immediately implemented into the portal, the executing authority, the administration, so that to enforce the trust amongst the stakeholders that whatever the law shall be implemented. So what happens is, when there is a law and it is not implemented, so the people who have to follow the law, the society, the stakeholders start taking the law a little light also. So that way, I'm actually talking on the very grassroots level what is been happening and what we have been evidencing for past 36 months into this. So moving ahead, to begin with, I would like to remind our learned August gathering today here through this conference, the Canons of Taxation by Adam Smith. Adam Smith is considered to be the father of economics, and in his book, much acclaimed book, Wealth of Nations, he has pointed out first 4 canons of taxation, and then after the need for having other attributes of a good taxation system, rest 4 from 5 to 8 were being added by future later thinkers after Adam Smith. So first, these first four attributes every taxation system should have into it, in order to make it a better system, in order to make it more adaptive system. So to begin with, it has to have equality, equity. It should treat with everyone with equity. It means what Adam Smith visualized, that richer should pay higher tax and poorer should pay lower tax. So it should be having a principle of equity. Then it should have a certainty. Everyone, the law, the one who has to abide with the law, to follow the law, should know that what law is there for him to abide to or to follow. It should not be something which every day changes, so that the people who have to follow the law, the citizen of the country, the taxpayers to be precise here in GST, actually leaves the track, and then they forgot, and then they lose the basic idea what is to be followed, when to be followed. And just giving you an example of what is happening, which is in contravention of this second principle of certainty. COVID-19, this pandemic has actually turned around everything, the entire system, the way we actually look, the way we actually work, the way we actually live now, the entire mankind. And due to considering this, they came out with certain relaxations with respect to compliance part. But what is the present situation of the last dates extended for making compliances is known to everyone. Even the department, when comes out with a fresh notification, simultaneously comes out with a circular also explaining that what does notification say. So they also are not very much clear and very much certain about what the law should be. Whatever you want to do it in one go, so that it remains for good long time stable, so that everyone can actually follow it. And then economy, the tax, the collection of the cost involved into collection of tax should not be more than the tax collected. And this problem we have been facing quite a long time, even in the past regime as well, even in income tax also, direct taxes also, and in GST as well. So this canon also somehow is not being actually applied into our taxation system. So look at it. This has been propounded by Adam Smith way back in the 17th century, and still we are not able to follow the basics of a good taxation system. And then convenience should be easy to apply, should be easy to understand. And then elasticity, productivity, simplicity, diversity. These are some other attributes of a good taxation system. But to have a more thrust over first four canons of this good taxation system. So I always wish that government or the lawmakers and the policy makers are actually listening to this, and they actually bring into these basic aspects with which the adaptability, the compliance, and many other things can be improved by default without making any extra effort into it. So with this note, I am going ahead with the expectations part. What we do expect, expectations not only would cover what are we actually expecting to do, but also what are we not expecting them to do, what are we not expecting them, that this should not be done. So we will be covering all these things. First, again very basic into the law part, starting with again the considering the backdrop of this pandemic. What comes into our mind immediately, that because of the lockdown there have been a loss of stock, huge loss of stock suffered by businesses, and those loss of stock would require writing off those stocks in books of accounts. What would happen for the input tax credit of those stocks which are being written off, considering the blocked credit of section 17(5) clause H of the GST Act 2017. So first expectation from the government is to have sensitivity, have empathy towards the businesses which are already facing, I would say, unprecedented slowdown in the world economy due to this pandemic. So if the ITC also on the stocks written off due to the loss happened because of I would say not taking care properly stock, or otherwise stocks were not being saleable, merchandisable because of many other reasons. So if this happens and then stocks are written off from the books of accounts, then what would happen to the input tax credit because of the application of blocked credit of section 17(5)(h). So first expectation of mine is to be sensitive towards this, come out with the clarification, and you may actually give some circular also or some other notification by way of which that you can defer the application of 17(5) to this specific 17(5)(h) to this specific aspect. So this is first thing what we are actually looking forward from the government. Then considering the same backdrop of this pandemic, this worldwide problem which is faced by the human beings. Now, when humans are in trouble, other humans do come forward to help each other, and that's what Indian corporates have done in past few months. We have witnessed, and kudos to them, and the way they have come forward to help the fellow countrymen. Now, what happened? Even the circular has been issued by the Ministry of Corporate Affairs with respect to CSR expenditure under Section 135 of the Companies Act. Now, what is expected from the GST Council today on this day is with respect to this CSR expenditure. We understand that so far as income tax allowability is concerned, there could be some problem because of the expressive provision under Section 37 explanation 1 attached to it under Income Tax Act 1961. But my dear friends, the problem which is of course I would say CSR expenditure is a very widespread discussion. I may not be able to cover the entire gimmick of it, but yes, when an organization distributes goods belonging, goods which are manufactured by them or are being traded by them or are being purchased by them and distributed free of cost to the fellow countrymen as a help, or even the services also provided by the corporates. So whether the input tax credit allowability should be made available to them, I expect the government to come out with a clarification, so that in this problem time, in this I would say the pandemic each time, wherein the much help is required from every corner to actually sail through the times. So I would request the government to come out with a clarification by way of a circular that CSR expenditure, the input tax credit available on the expenditure made for ensuring the corporate social responsibility, whether it is mandatory or non-mandatory, CSR expenditure could be mandatory or non-mandatory, both mandatory under section 135 or non-mandatory, even if you are not required to make some CSR expenditure mandatorily under a specific statute under Companies Act. Even if you do that, I believe you are doing the same in the course of furtherance of business only. You are building your image, you are building your brand, you are discharging your responsibility towards the society. You are a business, you are attracting more and more customers, and in a way you are helping the humanity. So I don't see that there are some jurisprudence already established on this aspect in the income tax as well, that I don't see that there is no humanitarian touch with any expenditure incurred by the organizations. So we cannot always say that there should be a direct nexus of any expenditure incurred with the activities performed by the organization. So in the course of furtherance of business, though the term is not defined in the law, CGST Act, but yes, taking a cue from dictionary meaning and the other judicial precedents which are already established even by the apex court of the country. So in a way we can always say that in order to expand, in order to enhance the image, in order to perform the activities which are the basic functions of the organization, whatever is done that shall constitute to be deemed to be in the course or furtherance of business only. And the definition of business is much wider under the CGST Act, and all the activities which we are referring, specifically CSR activities, shall squarely be falling into the business activity and in the course of furtherance of the business activity only. So, and it has not been to my mind if any liability of an input tax credit is to be determined, two-step criteria, two-step test is there. First is that it should be it should be incurred or proposed to be incurred in the course of furtherance of business only. And then the second criteria, that it should be an allowable credit under section 16(2) and should not be blocked under section 17(5) of the Act. And when we go into the 17(5) part, so to my mind, clause H, when we say goods lost, destroyed, written off, or destroyed by way of free samples or gifts, I don't think so. It is CSR expenditure would be considered to be either free samples distributed or gifts. So, and when we go into the construction of the word used, disposed of, that also according to various other judgments, and the apex court also has decided that thing, that when we say disposed of, it can be said to be it can be equated with the discarded. So discarded. So when we say goods or services distributed as responsibility of a corporate in this pandemic time, it cannot be equated with the goods discarded. So disposed of is always a discarded, but it is not discarded. So cannot be, the phrase disposed of cannot be used here when the goods are distributed as assuming the responsibility of a corporate. So to my mind, both tests are being fulfilled. The credit should not be disallowed, but yes, we expect that in this pandemic times, in this distress times, when if a government comes out with the circular clarifying this, then it would incentivize the corporates to make more expenditure with respect to helping the other beneficiaries into the country. So this will be a second expectation of ours from the government. And then again, considering the present times, when we say section 16(2), a second proviso of the CGST Act 2017, there is a provision called that when if the recipient fails to make payment of tax plus consideration within 180 days from the date of issue of invoice by the supplier, then the credit of the recipient shall be reversed by way of adding the credit into his output tax liability by way of Rule 37 of CGST rules. So when we say 180 days, considering the present times of pandemic, you find that there is a still lockdown kind of a situation across the country, even if it is unlock 2, unlock 3s in the process. But Majority of businesses are not being able to do business properly. People are working from homes only, and it is spreading all the more. Community spread is around the corner if it is not being contained very soon. So businesses are not into their full-fledged mode, and business cycles are not there. Working capital movement is not there, so they are not able to comply with the second proviso of section 16 subsection 2, and they will not be able to meet out the condition, and certainly they would have to require to uh, reverse the input tax credit already taken. But my dear friends, when I go back into the wordings, when I go back into the rationale of bringing this provision with effect from 1st July 2017, I find 3-4 reasons that this provision would not stand the scrutiny of judiciary in times to come. When we read the provision, I would request, please listen to me carefully, because I have not overburdened with you all with the provisions, and you already all know the provisions. That's today that the kind of structure the conference has been made is to actually do brainstorming at this juncture of 3 years. Then where are we actually heading to, and what should be the course of action now in times to come to of this system to make it actually realize the objective of good and simple tax. It is I don't see that it is at present a good and simple tax, but yes, as I said in the beginning, no law, no system can be perfect. We people, we are the people who are making the law. We are the people who are making this a great country of ours. So we have to make it a great, we have to make it good and simple. So when we read the law, it says the when recipient fails to make payment. So thrust supplied, emphasis supplied on the word fails to make payment, and then fails to make payment within the due date from the issue of invoice, within 180 days from the issue of invoice, fails to make payment, thrust supplied, emphasis supplied. Please mark these words. And then from the date of invoice, then the recipient has to add input tax credit into his output tax liability. Now, my dear friends, into his output tax liability as the manner prescribed. Now, first is fails to make payment. The Contract Act says that when two contracting parties enter into a contract which is not against the public policy, which is not against the existing law, then it is a valid contract. Now, if a valid contract has happened between A and B, and A grants the credit tenure of 365 days to B, then B does not fail to pay till the time A demands, according to the contract, according to the conditions of the contract, which is the payment becoming due only after expiry of the 365 days. So Contract Act gives power to make a valid contract, and when a recipient would fail to pay only when the due date comes for making payment. And if B fails to pay even after 365 days, which is the condition of the contract, then he would be considered to be failed to pay within due date from the date of invoice, when it is from the date of invoice. So first is this, and in the guise of this only, I wanted to supply emphasis to one more aspect towards it, is that how can the government put an embargo over me how to do business. My dear friends, if I'm not mistaken, Vikram sir, if listening, then I would request Vikram sir to put some light after this deliberation on this Article 31 of the Constitution, wherein it was said that the state shall ensure to every citizen of the country to facilitate to earn his livelihood. To my mind, this embargo is a restriction imposed over me in contravention of the Article 31, wherein state has to facilitate me to earn my livelihood. If you interfere into the business, the way how I have to do business, maybe it could be a possibility that A got work from B only on the condition that he would be giving payment after 365 days. Then if the government compulsorily wants B to make payment within 180 days, then A may not be getting business from B in times to come. So that is embargo, that is a restriction, a restraint imposed upon me to do business in this country. So that should not be the situation. And then uh, the rule 37, which is addendum to the section 16(2) second proviso, which says that in GSTR 2 I would be adding into my output liability, and GSTR 2 is not in place at all. Then how can they ask me to reverse my input tax credit adding into the output tax liability? And there are various judicial precedents also already there in the country, wherein there is a law but no machinery provision provided. Then the provision itself becomes futile. The law itself becomes futile because there is no machinery provision provided, and GSTR 2 has not seen the light of the day till now for past 36 months since the inception of the law. Then I cannot be asked to reverse my input tax credit by way of adding into output tax liability because there is no machinery provision. So to me, this provision, maybe if not read down by the honorable courts of the country, but at least should be put to rest. And if the government comes out themselves to put it to rest in abeyance for at least 2 more years, considering the pandemic situation, retrospectively, because you guys are very good at making retrospective amendments. Past 36 months, you have made 60 retrospective amendments, so you can add one more into the bucket. So this 180 days should not be in operation at least for next 2 years, considering the present economic situation, business working capital cycle. And so far as whether the this 180 days clause, 180 days issue shall fall into notification 55/20 released on 27 June 2020. Just for the reference of the viewers, listeners, I would like to reiterate section notification 55/20, whereby they have extended the due date of various actions falling within the period of 20th June till 30th August 2020 to 31st August 2020. So if any action which are enumerated into the notification, such as filing appeal, replying to show cause, replying to summons, or filing refund, or applying for LUT, or for exporting goods from the let export days within 90 days from the let export day, all these dates, if are falling within 20th March to 30th August, shall stand automatically be extended to 31st August. Now, whether this 180 days wala condition will be extended to 31st August, this is a question needs to be answered. To my mind, because GSTR 2 is not in operation, GSTR 3B is excluded from this 55/20 because section 39 calls for GSTR 3B filing. So section 39 is excluded from 55/20. So to my mind, 180 days wala condition does not fall into 20th March to 30th August, 31st August automatically. No, it would continue to be applied on the date on which it becomes due. So no relaxation for 180 days, but I strongly urge to the lawmakers, to the policymakers to please look into this aspect. This is not going to stand the scrutiny of jurisprudence in times to come. So is to save the image, save the face, come out with the notification to yourself put this provision into abeyance. Yes, another aspect which I would like to, of course, this special discount, post-supply discount has been much into discussion since the inception of the law. Circular number 92, 7th March 2018 came. Then circular number, if I'm not correctly remembering the number, 105, which was being withdrawn by the government, which was actually opening the Pandora's box. So I'm not going into those much details, because that is something which is very, very large topic to discuss. 30-40 minutes is required to discuss this topic itself. So, but I would request the government that yes, today Today, again considering the present economic situation worldwide, special discounts, post-supply discounts would be more common. Otherwise, the people, the recipients who have stored the goods would not be able to survive. And we may be finding falling the big giants in times to come because of this halt, standstill into the economic activities. I feel that the most important activity which government should focus on today, in my humble view, we have always been focusing on tax collection, taxing transactions, instead of creating an ecosystem into the economy, into the entire society, into the country, whereby promoting economic activities on which taxes are related. We are more focused on collecting taxes only, never focus on creating more economic activities whereby more and more taxes are levied on more and more economic activities. Number of transactions would increase, taxes would increase, gross taxes in absolute terms would increase without increasing the rate, without removing the benefits already given to the taxpayers. Now, how can you imagine an already given benefit can be removed post-dated, post ipso facto? It cannot be possible. It is against the principle of natural justice. It is against the principle of equity. It is against the principle of certainty. You find a provision going in favor of the taxpayer, you come out with a retrospective amendment and withdrew the entire benefit given. Cannot be possible. There are jurisprudence already established in this country. There cannot be a banana republic. I'm sorry to use this word. So you have to think yourself that these type of issues are required to be addressed today. So if you don't do it, natural deaths, businesses would find their natural deaths, and no government would like to have this kind of a situation. This would reduce the employment generation. This would reduce the this would actually damper the possibility of self-entrepreneurship into the country, ease of doing business. Many things are being curbed and removed from the face of the economy if today one of the most significant fiscal statute is not being taken care properly. Next, which I feel special bailout packages required for hospitality, tourism, and aviation. This is the largest hit of this pandemic is to these first three segments of the economy. So we have to have a special attention to these things. When we say hospitality includes hotels and restaurants also. At this juncture only, I would like to urge the lawmakers through this portal, through this webinar, through this August gathering, that lawmakers should come out with an option to restaurants to opt for 2 tax rates, either of them. At present, the rate of tax for restaurants 5% without ITC, no input tax credit. Majority of restaurants are already, I would say cafes, hospitality sector, restaurants are already suffering with the huge fixed cost and total shutdown of the business. In near terms also, I don't think so that the society would like to go physically to those restaurants. Big infrastructures have been created and big fixed costs in terms of rentals and other fixed costs are being incurred every month by them. 5% without input tax credit. I'm actually very much concerned about the life of these sectors because hospitality is one of the sectors which is one of the largest employment generator in the country. The daily wagers, one of the largest daily wagers get their employment through hospitality sector, including the banquet halls, the restaurants, the clubs, the cafes, the pubs, many other organizations of similar nature, even the small eateries, roadsides, many other. all these are covered under as restaurants as per the law, and the 5% without input tax credit shall require to be paid. So I suggest that there should be a dual taxation system, 5% without ITC and an option of 12% with ITC, with full ITC to the restaurants. This is another suggestion which was going to come in the succeeding slide. So when we spoke about hospitality, I thought to discuss here this suggestion only. So moving on, you know, whenever a thought of advance ruling comes to my mind, with utmost regards to the lawmakers, with these advance ruling authorities, quasi-judicial bodies, but of course headed by the departmental officials, with utmost regards. But whenever an advance ruling authority comes to my mind, it does not remain to be an advance ruling authority, but somehow becoming an adverse ruling authority. So I find, of course, I do read sometimes the advance rulings, because many a times I'm into public life, people send me various questions with respect to advance ruling authority judgments pronounced by various authorities. I have to read and view and to form my opinion on the opinions pronounced by them. But because we have witnessed in past 36 months, around 900 judgments have come, pronouncements have come out from advance ruling authorities across the country. If an organization is registered in 29 states and it is having a particular issue to be decided by the advance ruling authority in advance to be safe, sound, and on the positive side of the law, then it has to refer to various 29 advance ruling authorities. So that way, and otherwise also, if a registered taxpayer goes to a particular state advance ruling authority on a particular issue, and the same issue is being presented to the other state advance ruling authority, the judgment are at contrast. They are at complete deviation from each other. So how would a person decide on a particular aspect? So it is creating more of confusion than bringing clarity about the law. Advance ruling objective, authority objective, has been visualized by the law while framing it, is to actually have clarity beforehand, before actually entering into a transaction, because this is a transaction based law. Transaction based assessments are there. So the purpose is somehow is not being met completely. So that is why I strongly feel that an authority, national advance ruling authority, should be made with an immediate effect, giving effects to sections already there in the law, section 101 capital A to 101 capital C. So this is another expectation or a suggestion or a strong requirement of the economy or the stakeholders today to have a national advance ruling authority and pronouncing judgments on national issues instead of making every issue state specific. It's a one nation, one tax, one market. So it has to be a, I would say, when a particular issue is decided by the government or the advance ruling authority, it is uniform. It should be uniform for the countrywide application. Although the judgment is made applicable only to the applicant, no doubt about it, but the ratio decidently can be established for others to follow. At least people are reading these judgments to understand the mindset of the administrators of the law, and divergent views, deviating views. So this is another thing, section 73, 74, this time period should be counted. Of course, the first time period is just started from 7th Feb 2020, because section 73 and 74 says within 3 years or 5 years respectively from the due date of filing of annual return. So my dear friends, for 17-18, the period has just started for section 73 and 74, when they can open the show cause for issues pertaining to previous 3 years, under section 73, and they can show cause for determination of tax, interest and penalty under section 74 for past 5 years. So just the time has just begun from 5th Feb 2020, which was the last date for filing the annual return for 17-18. So this time should be counted, the COVID time, because the business is disturbed. So again, one more request to the government to please create an image which is a taxpayer friendly. Do not consider every taxpayer. I would say that the government should not be in a view that maximum tax should be extracted. Even the many officers are of the view that the taxpayers are merely the agents of the government to collect these indirect taxes. Similarly, I also strongly agree with the fact that the taxpayers are merely the agents for the government to collect taxes from the end users, the final consumers who are actually using the goods or services. Those users do pay tax. They are just the mediating agency, the taxpayers. So taxpayers should not be viewed with a preconceived notion. So they should be viewed with the, I would say, utmost sensitivity towards the businesses, and especially in this distress times. Again, now here comes one more, I would say, I don't know, I do call Rule 36 sub Rule 4 as the impossible eventuality. It is impossible to do, and eventuality is there. I don't know when would we actually be able to implement it. I'm not going into the nitty-gritty, the legal scrutiny of it, whether this would stand, whether this would be read down, whether it is constitutionally valid, whether the law permits the lawmakers to actually do it or not. I'm not going into those details. This has already been challenged before the Honorable Apex Court by way of PIL and various high courts of the country, including Delhi, Gujarat, and Punjab and Haryana. So I would just only be requesting the government, though they have suspended the operation of Rule 36 sub Rule 4 for starting from Feb till August, 7 months. I strongly urge the lawmakers, the GST Council, the CBIC, to please rationalize this provision. This is not something which actually something which is giving. Again, with my humble understanding, I feel as a normal citizen of the country that from every corner in this law, the government is squeezing the taxpayer just to extract more and more taxes. Whether it is a correct manner, I would say moral policies being upheld or not, is not being taken care by the government. So my mind is actually struck with this aspect also. When how would a bona fide recipient would ensure that the supplier files returns, and what would happen to those quarterly taxpayers? Those file their section 37 return quarterly, and they would never be able to, and I would be taking credit under section my 39 return, that is monthly. So on the one side, the law itself prescribes the remedy for the, or the facility for the quarterly filers because of the aggregate turnover, threshold of aggregate turnover. On the other side, one provision of the law is at the logger's head of the other provision of the law. Why can't we rationalize it? This one, at least you came out with a circular in November 2019, when 1st October 2019 this provision was being implemented. 9th October, I beg your pardon, 9th October 2019. Then in November you came out with a circular, but refrain from clarifying this issue. What would happen to the recipient if my supplier is a quarterly filer? So are you asking me to stop doing business with quarterly filers? Or are you asking me to impose upon him that you become monthly filer, then only I'll do business with you? On the one hand, you are concerned with the reduction of cost of compliance for MSME. On the other hand, you are actually creating an environment in the country. Even from 180 days wala issue, even if bigger corporates are afraid, if you have to ensure or install the financial discipline into the system, For MSME Act is already there, which ensures if payment is not made within 30 or 45 days, then the interest shall accrue to the recipient of the goods or services. Then I don't know why you are actually creating an environment, whether it is intentional or unintentional, I fail to understand, but the environment of such nature is being created into the ecosystem that MSME is to be suppressed. No, rather we should actually motivate the self-entrepreneurs. Those are the lifeline of the country. They are the largest employment generators of the country. So you cannot actually have this kind of a policy which is not promoting MSME. So on the other hand, you came out with the enhancement of the limits of considering any organization as MSME even to 100 crores. And this ecosystem is suppressing MSME. I don't know why. So I strongly recommend and request the government that Rule 36 sub Rule 4 should be suspended immediately, sine die, and save the image of the government before the court actually asks you to do so. And then you go for retrospective amendment. I'm sorry, what are you going to do with this also? Likewise, what you did in brand equity, you came out with the section 145 a retrospective amendment within prescribed period. Brand equity said that there is no prescribed period, so you installed the prescribed period within section 140 itself from retrospectively. I don't know why you are actually so much adamant about admitting the due legitimate credit of honest taxpayers, which is being forgotten or which is being left out to be taken into the new regime. You are still coming out with the various aspects of the law. You are still pondering on various nitty-gritty of the law, and you are expecting the honest taxpayers or the taxpayers of the country to be much conversant with the law and comply the provisions of the law on the day when it is being told only. And your portal itself is not being very much ready, totally into different shape what has been expected. So I don't know what is but yes, I assume my responsibility to keep on speaking without fear and favor, and because I feel that the only concern or the only loyalty of mine should be towards the law, towards the subject, and not to anybody else. Even I am not considering that the taxpayer should be given with the undue advantages, but yes, the lawmakers should also consider the reasonable plight of the taxpayers and the stakeholders of the country, stakeholders of the law. This also Rule 86(1)(b). This is again the same thing. You are expecting me to ensure that the supplier pays taxes. How can you do so? How can you actually think? Now, when we go back into VAT regime, all the learned scholars of the subject are on the platform also and listening also. Mahalakshmi Cotton Greening Mill, Bombay High Court. On the similar line, Arise India, Delhi High Court. Arise India judgment was favoring the bona fide purchaser. When a seller does not pay the tax, if it is bona fide purchase, then the purchaser shall not be asked to pay taxes. On the contrary, Honorable Bombay High Court said something on the contrary, that the purchaser is required. But Arise India favorable judgment of Delhi High Court went to the Apex Court by way of SLP on the pretext of the department. SLP was rejected. To my mind, yes, if SLP is rejected, so this is somehow a larger established principle in the previous regime also, and you are actually bringing out all those texts which are already settled into their long, deep rooted coffins, but still you want to bring them out and still fight on the same issues. I don't know why. So this also is somehow giving rise to the same plight of the honest taxpayer, that is somebody is asking me to ensure that supplier pays taxes. I don't know how it would happen. So I request that please, and blocking of credit itself also is a much tedious problem. The proper officer is being given power to block credit for anything and everything. So how it is possible? Then RCM issue is there. I feel that RCM should be brought back, and at least 9-4, so that it increases the revenue collection. Every registered recipient should be asked to supply the permanent account number of the unregistered supplier, so that the aggregate value of the supplies made by the unregistered supplier is clubbed, and the moment it increases the threshold of 40 lakh, the automatic notice of getting itself registered should be went to them, and this would enhance the tax net, which is the distribution chain. Entire distribution chain in the society is not being into the tax net, and eventually we will automatically be the $5 trillion economy. Construction per works contract is not allowed. Safari retreat judgment is everybody's delight, but that is again challenged in the Supreme Court by way of special leave petition by the department. Though the operation of the Safari retreat, Honorable Odisha High Court judgment is not stopped, I strongly urge that manufacturing, hospitality, and real estate today, considering the pandemic, considering the world economies, considering our neighboring countries, considering the possibility of converting India into the next manufacturing hub for the world, much more investment into infrastructure is required to be made by the manufacturing sector. Please give this benefit to them so that they feel at least a little cushion for their input tax credit incurred on the construction of immovable property. This is something which is very important. Is hospitality and real estate. Please, these measures would actually boost the confidence of the sectors. More and more investment would come, more and more economic activities, more and more taxes, more and more prosperity, my dear friends. It is a complete win-win situation for everyone. I don't know when would people come to know. Another wishful thinking of mine is, my dear friends, is intersectorial ITC of CGST in one state should be adjusted to output tax of CGST in another state. You have already a wonderful clearing mechanism within the states and the center, so you can do this also, and the law is amended when the input tax credit of one CGST of the distinct person can be adjusted against the output tax payable of the another distinct person. Then why can't I do so when the lawmakers or the administration can do so? Why can't I do so? Even I am thinking, of course, it is my wishful thinking, Sheikh Chillipana, that the credit, whenever is available to me, should be converted into a bearer instrument, a tradable scrip, and should not be asked me to go for refund. Departments unavoidable problems or the difficulties can be removed, and this credit can be available to me. I can always sell in the open market. Credit is credit, would be used only for offsetting the tax liability. So no refund process should be there, and this thing can be easily mitigate many manpower which is utilized. Tribunals should be formed ASAP and would reduce much workload on the Honorable High Courts, and they can devote more time on catering to the factual issues. Then they can give more time to the legal issues also, and should be of course Madras High Court judgment is there. A little difficulty in the formation of tribunals, but yes, it should be overcome immediately, and tribunals should be formed in the interest of justice to one and all. As I said, retrospective amendments should be avoided. It does not give a very positive image of the government. It gives an image as if that the government, wherever finds something going against them, they come out with a retrospective amendment and taking away the already provided relief to the taxpayers. This should be avoided to not further hampering the image of the lawmakers. As I discussed with this also, Rule 36 and 16.4 requires little more clarity. We have already discussed this. We have already discussed the credit should not be exporters do pay reverse charge and then they seek refund. So what is the need? What is the reason for that? You are blocking working capital of the exporters, and on the other hand you are putting more workmen workforce on granting refunds on the same, and thereby the leakages is also possible. There could be unsurplus people in the system also who may seek for some ineligible refunds. So you come out with the policy that exporters should not require to pay RCM and should not seek for refund of the same also. And decision making is very taking time. Many things have been suggested, many more things can be suggested, but please come out with the solutions as soon as possible to install the confidence which is little shaken of the society, of the tax practitioners, of the professionals, of the taxpayers. So that confidence has to be reinstalled. I request that other than the suggested issues which are beneficial to the society and the taxpayers, no further changes should come in the law, at least for next 2 years. Have patience, bring certainty so that the confidence of the society, the stakeholders are being reinstalled. This is another ease of doing business. 10,000 till you may pay into cash or check. Why can't you allow a UPI system into this portal so that you can pay through Bheem UPI, Paytm, XYZ, many online wallets are there, and you can pay taxes. And now, in order to pay more than 10,000, the taxpayer has to take online banking. All MSMEs are not very much tech savvy. They cannot. Now the cyber frauds are increasing day by day. So why don't you give this facility to the taxpayer to pay taxes through UPIs and Bheem app? Very other online wallets are there. So this is something which is again ease of doing business. I discussed the restaurant. This is again one very important aspect when there are two distinct persons. One is in SEZ, one is in DTA, domestic tariff area, and DTA charges some cross charge to the SEZ entity. SEZ entity accumulates input tax credit but do not have any facility to seek for refund of the same. Section 54 is completely silent for this. So I request that many SEZs, I have encountered with at least 10 such SEZ cases wherein department is totally rejecting, even not rejecting, but making show cause. And after doing show cause, they are passing the order of rejection, and then we have to go for filing appeal also. So this way, this is creating more and more litigation, more and more trouble for their own monies. Cross empowerment is another very troublesome issue. Earlier, September 2017, they came out with the first circular, and then they said that the only state shall, they employed the random sampling, random technique to find out those taxpayers would be administered by the state authorities and central authorities. And then they came out with one more cross empowerment only with respect to I would say intelligence based inquiries. But today a recent high court judgment was there. I'm missing the name of that judgment. Recent judgment wherein in 2020 judgment was also only there. If so, wherein the central tax authorities started assessment proceedings and state tax authorities started assessment proceedings on the same issues, and the taxpayer has to go to the high court by way of writ, and then the high court decided that only the authority, which is the central tax authority, which is already had initiated the proceedings, would only continue with that, and state would not do. So cross empowerment issue is requires to be, even section 129 wherein the conveyance of goods, carrying goods is being intercepted and then penalties are imposed. Cross empowerment issue is cropping up every day. Very big problem. I am registered in Haryana. Goods are moving in Gujarat. Gujarat officer intercepted it, and then they asked me to pay taxes. Instead of sending the case to my proper officer, I have to go and file appeal to them only, and they are not following the procedures. Also, taxes are paid. I contested appeal, fought and won, and the tax required to be refunded. Now the department says the temporary registration which was being awarded to me in Gujarat is now being done away on the portal itself. Now what would happen? Nobody knows. So these are the issues of cross empowerment also, which are troubling a lot. Now moving ahead with the portal, now just last 5 minutes because I'm afraid I'm already crossed the time limit prescribed to me. If anybody can confirm how long I can continue.
Sir, another 5 minutes are there.
Thank you, sir. So portal has always been tooth and nail. It is actually when I say in Hindi, ये हमें लोहे के चने चबवाए जा रहा है, चबवाए जा रहा है. So it is actually giving us complete bad taste since last 36 years. I feel law is not that bad. I'm sorry, I'm using the word that bad. Of course, there are certain improvements which are required to be made, but law is not that kind of a piece of statute which is totally not. It is very good piece of statute, but the implementing agency, that is the portal, that is one very important pillar of the administration, is not being able to implement it the way the law is being visualized by the lawmakers. Look at the GSTR 1, 2, and 3. My dear friends, earlier in VAT regime, we used to work very closely across the country in VAT regime. Of course, the portals were totally different in all 39 or 29 states, 31 states. But by and large, the revenue leakage in terms of bogus billing, fake invoices was being curbed to a largest extent. Had this GSTR 1, 2, 3 been in place, this would have, what is being faced today, we have been evidencing across the country, the kind of rackets which are popping up unearthed by the intelligence agencies of the government. We would have not seen those revenue leakages, biggest frauds in the era. So similar, whose shortcoming it is? It is certainly the portal shortcoming, my dear friends. I do not like to criticize, but at the same time, unless I do not speak, of course, even the various high courts also have said the same things to GSTN many a times earlier. But we are the largest, one of the largest exporter of software in the world, and we cannot even cater. Pardon me, by taking name of Amazon, Flipkart, Paytm, many other online software portals, Zomato, Swiggy, wherein lakhs and lakhs of people are actually using the portal software on the same time, and it does not give any kind of a such response that only 1,50,000. Now they are saying now we have doubled the capacity, only 3 lakh people only at one point of time can use the infrastructure. I don't know, when there are 1 crore 30 lakh people are there. So you generate the infrastructure according to that. So today also I would like to strongly request them, please do tell us whether with effect from 1st October 2020 also new return forms are coming or not, so that we prepare. We do prepare, we read it, we find the nitty-gritties, we follow the mechanics of the form, and then you, because of your system is not ready, you come out with the extension one and again. So please inform the society, inform the stakeholders in very much in advance that what are you going to do. Take decision. Even if you defer it, no problem, no hurry. You have got section 43 capital A, which is giving you the power to implement these new form supply return forms. You have already implemented partially the section 43 capital in the form of rule 36 of rule 4, though that may find the agony of the jurisprudence in times to come. But you actually tell the stakeholders that what are you going to do with these forms. Infrastructure, I told also already, IT infrastructure requires total upgrading. Please do that. It is in the interest of the society, in the interest of the economy. Of course, e-way bill system is working so beautifully. Then why can't we have GSTN also? Why these staggered dates are there on the pretext of the fact that all the people do come on filing on the last day? Last day you have provided, I may come on the last date, 23 hours, 55 minutes. 5 minutes are taken for the return forms to file. I may come on the 23 hours, 55 minutes. How can you stop me to use my lawful right of filing the due return by the due date? You cannot stop me. So you rather create, it is your responsibility to create an infrastructure to facilitate to do what you are asking me to do. You are saying many other things. I don't want to go into those details now. So, but it is strongly recommended to the portal, to the lawmakers, to please give some time for the portal also. This has already been, as I was referring before the start of the program also, this is one of the issue. Online, you reject my refund application, and now I have to file an appeal. There is no facility provided on the portal to file appeal for the rejection of refund. And when I go to the department, proper officer, he says, I don't have any guideline to file manual refund appeal for this. Now, where would I go? Where is my refund? Where is my money? I cannot, wait for perpetuity till this universe remains, that my refund comes. On the one hand, you are saying that refunds are expedited, refund payments are expedited. On the other hand, these are the issues which are cropping up every other day. Form 9, I always speak very at the top of my voice. As I said earlier, my only love is the love towards subject. My only loyalty is the loyalty towards the subject. I don't want that there should be a revenue leakage for the government also. I don't want there should be a unjust treatment for the taxpayer also. Now this Form 9, you asked me to file Form 9. You guide me that while filing the Form 9 for 17-18, for 18-19, if your supply is left out to be reported, this is an opportunity to, on 3rd July, you gave a press release and guided me, though I don't know what is the legal sanctity of that press release. So you guided me, if you have 3rd July 2019, if you have forgot to report your supply, then you can report the supply in Form 9 and pay taxes. Now, my dear friends, if I add table number 4 in Form 9 with additional supply, which has been auto-populated from GSTR 1, if I have forgotten to report, then auto-populated GSTR 1 supply is not matching with my book supply. So supply which is there in books, I changed the auto-populated supply and added more supply. Now what happens is, I am a very innocent taxpayer. I have a supply of maybe 50 lakh, 40 lakh, 70 lakh, but I have to file my annual return. Though you have made it optional for up to aggregate turnover of 2 crore, that is separate, but I am filing. Even if I am more than 2 crore, I am filing. Now what happens is, if I increase the supply in table number 4, technically the form itself should ask me to pay the difference of tax liability which have increased, but the form does not ask me. I'm sorry, ironically. Supply increased from 100 to 120, but 20 rupees additional supply tax on that, form does not ask me to pay. I can file the form without paying the additional tax liability created by myself. And inadvertently, innocently, I pressed the button submit and filed. And I thought now the portal would ask me to pay the tax. Now the portal would ask me to pay the tax. Portal does not ask me to pay the tax. And the return Form 9 is filed. And I'm waiting, then the mail will come, I'll pay the tax. I'm waiting, the message shall come, I'll pay the tax. Nothing comes. I forgot. And the department doesn't have any control over that. Then what would happen? The honest taxpayer who was ready to pay the tax of the differential tax liability did not pay. So my dear friends, this is something which is, a simple Excel file can be created. My first year article in the office can create an Excel file where the result can be controlled. And here the result is not controlled. I don't know what is going to happen. Form 9 requires amendment because while filing Form 9 of 18-19, 17-18 details are not being a proper tabulation is not provided to me. So requires revision, requires clarification from the department. Please do the needful. Another aspect which is very interesting, but I have last 1 or 2 slides, I'm finishing it off. Now, while filing my TDS return, this is a very interesting aspect on the portal. Though I do not use much portal, but because I am into public life, so many queries do come to me every day. And then query come, I research into it, probe into it, then find actually this is the problem. Now, this is the problem which I am trying to bring home in front of you all. I am a supplier. I supply goods to the government department. And according to section 51, if the value exceeds 2 lakhs, then the government department has to deduct tax at the rate of 2%. 1% each, 2%. Now, I have many suppliers, I have many recipients to whom I supply. Say, for example, 5 recipients to whom I supply goods. 4 of them deducted, paid, filed return. 1 of them did not deducted but did not pay the tax. Government department, you can't force them. Now, while filing for the TDS return, TDS entry acceptance, I have to file a return for accepting the TDS entries appearing in my login ID, and then only after accepting those entries, those tax deducted by my recipient appears in my cash ledger, electronic cash ledger, and then I can utilize it. I can do whatever I want with that cash ledger. Of course, I cannot buy a pizza for my family from that cash ledger, ironically, but yes, I can pay taxes. I can even now form a PMT09 is on the portal now. I can transfer the tax from the one major head to another major head or minor or whatever I can do. Now, out of 5, 4 deducted, paid, filed return, 1 did not. Now, that 1 entry is not appearing in my TDS entry for the relevant month for which 5 entries were there. Now, what happens? That one particular deductor, the recipient of mine, I am the supplier, pays the tax 2 months thereafter from today. Say in July, deducted, pays in September. Now he files for July return, appears in my July TDS entry. But the moment I accept remaining 4, that the remaining 1 entry, the moment I accept remaining 4 and file my TDS return, now the next entry, 1 entry which will be filed in September but appearing in 2A ledger would not appear to me because the July TDS return is already filed. Now what to do with the tax deducted, cash tax deducted? What to do with that? I have informed many GST officers by way of this August gathering, this wonderful, very elite platform. I would like to bring home this fact for the concerns that this is a very big trouble for the innocent taxpayers. GSTR 2A, I don't know why the GSTR 2A is troubling me all the more now. GSTR 2A Act does not have any legal sanctity. By way of rules, you cannot bring anything which commands the credit of tax. It does not borrow power from section 16 subsection 2, and nothing is there. But still GSTR 2A is becoming the lifeline for all the recipients of supply of goods or services. So 2A, when 1 entry is there, when entry is amended after 2 months, maybe because of many reasons, then amended and original entry both appears. That also creates confusion. Now, this is something which is very common. When you amend a particular entry, the original entry, if you allowing that original entry to be amended, then original entry should be removed from the portal, and then the only amended entry should appear. I don't know for what reason. Of course, they may be having some good reason, but this is creating confusion, and this is even creating revenue leakages also. Original entry for 100 rupees credit, amended entry for 80 rupees credit. Recipient taking 100 rupees credit, though he is eligible for 80 rupees credit only. So now here reaches to our last slide, and I hope that I must have done the justice to the topics which is being given to me, and I must have ignited the minds, the very brilliant minds of our country, so that to actually think on these lines and bring some changes which are required to make realize the actually the the dream of good and simple tax. Thank you for the organizers. Thank you, Vijay sir. Thank you, Aresh sir. Thank you all. Thank you, Kamlesh bhai. Thank you all the other organizers. Thank you, our chairman sir, Vikram sir, for allowing me this opportunity. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Rajendra ji, for such a marvelous and a detailed presentation. I now invite our chairman, Shri Vikram Nankani ji, to share his concluding remarks, and later we will take on the question that we have received. This time, sir, we have received lots of questions for you, so we will try to complete limited time, whatever questions we can take, as the time permits. Shri Vikram Nankani ji, please.
Yeah, thank you, Rajendra Roy. That was really, really illuminating. I think you touched upon topics which are both historical, which we have been experiencing in the last 3 years, and also the problems that we are presently facing, especially aggravated by the pandemic that has captured the world over. You did touch upon some of the topics, and one of the aspects that you said, ease of business, and what is the constitutional provisions for that, that especially in the context of 180 days. It is unfortunate that the government does take resort to the exception created in the constitution, and they do not really deal with what the constitution permits in terms of Article 19(1)(g), which talks about freedom of trade, business, and commerce, and that's one of the fundamental rights guaranteed to every citizen under Part 3. They often take recourse to the exception in Article 19(6), which is if the restrictions are reasonable, then the government can always put reasonable restrictions on their fundamental right to carry on trade, business, and commerce. The all-important question is, what is reasonable? And there's no one-size-fits-all. And that is where I think the government has the luxury of playing in the joints, does take full advantage of that kind of a situation. And Tran 1 is a great example of that. 3 years, this baby is still having teething problems. I don't know what will happen for it in the next coming years. By now, it should have got over all the teething problems, technical issues, which you so very rightly pointed out. The network, which was TomTom to be the backbone of GST, which would enable it to operate smoothly and seamlessly across the country, but that has really not withstood the pressure of the system as a whole. So we have seen conflicting judgments. Delhi High Court saying something, Bombay High Court first saying something else, and now recently, 3 days back, taking a different course altogether in the case of Southaby's and permitting it to be filed by the end of the month. Now, all these show that there is not only a problem at the government end, but there is a serious issue with the courts not having uniformity in the interpretation of this one statute, which is supposed to have been the fabric on a pan-India basis, coupled with the fact that there is complete apathy of the courts to GST. One thing we all recognize is that if judgments do not come in time, if the courts take their own sweet time, and that situation has now been compounded, the misery has been compounded by the lockdown and the pandemic, if they take their own sweet time in interpreting the law, everyone in the field operations are going to have a great day, a gala day, and each one will pull and push in his own way the law. And that will lead to a complete chaos as far as the administration of the law is concerned. So we need quick courts to react quickly. They should appreciate that this law, if I am going to keep the final hearings at the end of 4 years, 5 years, you are not going to achieve anything. So very well said about the retrospective amendments. We have seen recently also the retrospective amendment in relation to these same transitional arrangements about the timing, the power to have timing of prescribe the time limit, and that amendment has also come in 2020. There are various other issues, for example, inverted tax structure refunds. There was an amendment made last year, and one doesn't know what is the full scope of that amendment. That is still to be tested by the courts. And there again, input services are not part of the formula in calculating the refund in case of inverted tax structures. I mean, I could multiply and go on, and so very rightly brought out by Rajendra Arora about the multiple issues that we have. The adverse authority for adverse ruling, if I may call it, in instead of that is a real pain as far as the SSC is concerned. It was supposed to be a place where people could go and get first aid. Instead of first aid, now that has become the last recourse for the SSC. Time doesn't permit us. The moderator, the MC has told us there are a number of questions for the speaker. I'll leave it to the speaker to deal with those questions. Thank you, Mr. Chugani. Thank you, everybody on this panel.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Nangani.
Hari, just a minute before we proceed. I would just like to inform the chairman and the speaker that this recording will also be shared with the GST Council Vice Chairman. We have already spoken to him. So your message will be forwarded, sir.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Chalo, coming to now question and answer sessions, I'm going to take some of the questions because the time has already gone. So we will take 3-4 questions from the availability. So let us start. The very first question, I think so you have already addressed in your deliberation that there is no appeal mechanism. Online mechanism is still not there, and physical appeal filing guidelines are not available with the officer. Now going to another question is, can slump sale exempted from tax under GST can be a tool to escape liability in the hands of taxpayer? Since Schedule 2 exemption notification only deals with taxable person, what would be the position in case of person exclusively dealing in exempted goods and services, where business as going concern is transferred? Can proper officer take recourse of Section 85 in case of transfer of business as going concern in case of transfer of business by person dealing exclusively in exempted goods and services? Example like pathology labs.
Sir, this is very rightly pointed out that slump sale can be in the guise of transfer of business as going concern. So yes, I also agree in concurrence with the queries that the department, the proper officer can actually, so far as specifically what he has asked for about the supplier who is exclusively into supply of exempt supply services like path lab, diagnostic sectors. So that could be a very well possibility. And but I feel that in order to give a true color of the transaction, the agreement would come to its savior, and the agreement should be designed in such a manner that if it is actually not a slump sale and actually a transfer of going concern, then all the assets and liabilities along with the other things should be transferred as such. So that way, it would be difficult for the proper officers to assess that transfer as a slump sale instead of transfer of business as a going concern.
Thank you, sir. So there is another question which I am taking up. It is whether ITC is available on GST return for March 2019 submitted on 22nd October 2019. Return is delayed by 2 days. Last date to avail ITC credit for 18-19, which is 30.
If I'm correct, if I'm thinking correctly, the last date for 18-19 was 21st September. I'm sorry, 21st October for filing 3B return of September 19. That date was extended by 1 day.
Correct.
If I'm correctly remembering it. So if you file on 22nd October, then you are filing 1 day delayed. And the credit pertaining to March 19 shall not be available to you because of the application of Section 16, subsection 4.
Thank you, sir. Another question which I'll take it up is, this will be, I think so, the last question as we have to conclude with the vote of thanks also. With lockdown now being implemented at local levels, Section 5 of the Limitation Act ought to be made applicable to allow the jurisdictional officer or appellate authorities to condone delay in compliances?
Sir, for this matter, the CBIC has already addressed by way of this 35/20 and then substituted with 55/20, wherein the time limit, whatever the thing which has been falling within 20th March to 30th August shall stand to be due dated on 31st August. So law of limitation, somehow they are not even considering the entire period for that matter. The due date is automatically falling on 31st August. So that has already been taken care, I believe.
Yes. Thank you, but I'm sorry to all the delegates. The other questions cannot be taken up right now, but definitely we will try to pass on these questions to our speaker and try to address your queries. Now, coming to the task of vote of thanks, I would like to thank our esteemed chairman and speaker for the session, for gracing the occasion and raising the bar of this conference. Chairman, sir, it was really a pleasure listening to you and having such a vast experience behind you, and you sharing your experience with us is like a blessing given to us. And coming to our speaker, sir. Sir, yes, you have did justice to the topic. The name of the topic is GST expectations from the lawmakers. So expectations means उम्मीदें, उम्मीदों पर तो दुनिया टिकी है. So वही हम कर रहे हैं. आपने काली रात तो बहुत दिखा दी हम लोग को, and last में आपने बोला कि we expect कि lawmakers सब ठीक कर दें. Like advance ruling is nothing but adverse ruling authority. But again, we have to have faith in our law. So thank you so much for coming out with each and every point, like Rule 36(4), Rule 86(1)(b), payment within 180 days, post-supply discounts and all. You have rightly touched to the important topics of our business industry. I thank you so much once again for such a good and marvelous presentation. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Chairman, sir. Thank you, all the organizers. Thank you, Vijay, sir. Thank you, everyone. Kamlesh.